Good morning, early birds. It is a pleasure and a challenge to evaluate this spectacular cloud full of illustrious figures. And I will start by addressing the welcome we get. Aidan, our guest host, he has this gentle, warm, and easygoing manner. And isn't that the best way to welcome newcomers to the club, to entice them to join this magnificent, vibrant community? I'd recommend that he leave his hands at his side, ready for action, because he started with his hand on his leg, and then it went on his hip. So I would leave it at his side, which would then allow him to move his arms forward as necessary. I would also commend his very relevant question about holidays. Connecting to something that's going on generally is a very useful way to get people engaged in what you are saying. Our sign-in, Mame Ya, she had this broad smile and clear instruction, exactly what you want when time is compressed and you need to get a job done quickly. A recommendation, perhaps she could remind us to press the button to send the lifts back to the ground floor. Because when I got to the lift, it was the ground floor, but I can't recall whether I did the same, and a prompt would have helped me remember. Mike at the reception had this incredibly broad smile, and the thing about Mike is, whenever you come up to him, it looks like you have just won an immense prize. And of course, you have won the prize of attending this magnificent meeting. Now, our evaluators, Stephen Thomas, in reverse order. His spontaneous humor when the lectern seemed to be going a bit awry. A spontaneous bit of humor is the best way to deal with something going on in the environment. And you can even pretend something's going wrong if you can spin a humorous line. Very witty, very humorous. A recommendation, he said in terms of 4 or 5 times, I lost count. So watch the connections between the different bits of your speech. Another commendation was his very rich evaluation. It covered a very broad array of dimensions. And not only that, he also very effectively summarized. At the end of the evaluation, he had a good summary, and even in the first part of the evaluation, where he had a rather long set of commendations and recommendations on a theme, he then summarized that very concisely, so that he made sure we knew exactly what he was getting to, rather than going to. Then Jeremy Henderson had great eye contact. He had a number of notes with a lot of information, and he managed to look at the audience almost all the time. Very good use of notes. I would recommend that he think about his use of the stage. He seemed to be a bit rooted at the beginning, with his legs like that. He then moved when he showed us what Miguel had done, but then became re-rooted. So perhaps think about how to move a bit more on stage, so long as it's purposeful, which he did. And that is another commendation. All his movement exactly meant something and helped reinforce the message he was conveying. Evaluator 1 was Catherine. Now, she had a very vivid description of the exchange she had with Mark, and that helped us get into the context of what the evaluation was addressing. What is a speaker looking for? What was the build-up to that speech? Perhaps she might have benefited from a bit more structure, because that took up a bit of a long time. Then, at some point, she gave something like a 15 to 20 second recommendation, and it was almost all commendations, but then suddenly the red flag came up, and she did give a recommendation. So I would recommend that she choose a structure, a pre-packaged structure, and try to keep to it. For example, first commendations, then recommendations, then commendations, or commendation, recommendation, commendation, recommendation, commendation, summary, but try to force yourself to keep that structure. Now, we had our linguist Taz, whose introduction was a poem to language itself, enchanting, soothing to the soul. Perhaps I'd recommend to explain a rhetorical device so that people who are maybe less skilled might pick it up little by little. But commendation, no notes, that was a feat worth noting. The conduplicatia. Then our timekeeper, Raphael Henderson, he has this very playful nature which always wins the audience over. Perhaps think of how you deploy that, and it is a double-edged sword, because when he started playing around with the notes and saying, well, I'll do it, but oh, I can't remember, that became a tiny bit distracting. But I will end on a high note because his vigorous salute, his voice is extraordinary. And the warmth and tone in the room went up immediately when he came on stage and said, "Good morning, early birds." Table topics evaluator Mark. He said, conversely, what I would have liked, which I thought was a very good alternative way of linking. And with topics evaluator, it's especially difficult to make the different evaluations sound different. And he achieved that with different speech markers and connectors. A recommendation, he said, he started with, well, there are many topics, so I'll crack on. It's a bit of a cliche, and Mark is one of the people who has made me laugh the most in this club with his brilliant wit. So I would challenge him to try better. But another commendation, very good examples, and I love the Rome city versus Rome movement. Pure genius. Topics master, Javier. So friendly and charming. Whenever Javier is on stage, it feels like he has mentioned he likes food. It feels like he's about to offer you a plate of something delicious, or he's about to regale you with something as a host with full hospitality. Small recommendation, he was so relaxed, he actually came in with his hand in his pocket. So he could possibly pay attention to that. But I love how he introduces names. It's so casual. He sort of says, so I would like to hear how Ernesto did blah, blah, blah. And it's almost like he's having a conversation with the entire audience, rather than just presenting someone on stage, as it should be. We're getting to the end. Our Toastmaster, Wei Wei. Such clear enunciation. Very clear words, every single one of them. I understood everything, which in English is sometimes a bit complicated because there are so many nuances and so many similar sounds. Well done enunciation. Recommendation, if you ask people to clap, leave the name to the very end. Because when she said, well, I would like you to clap for Javier for blah, 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 but we didn't get that because people started clapping. She brought in the name, and that's a trigger. You hear the name, you clap. So first you explain, and then you bring out the name and people clap. A commendation, great links between speakers. Plenty of banter, very concise. And finally, our President Shaheen, his vocal variety, pause, tone, and so on and so forth, masterfully done. Recommendation, perhaps a smile, because he's so polished on stage. I saw him smiling when he was sitting down. It was so cute, you see him smiling. So, do that on stage as well. Do that on stage as well. And my last note, to finish on a high note, his frank, open look immediately makes you feel you're in good hands. And in those good hands, I now leave you. Mr. President.